Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel, and I know it's going to be an interesting show when, while preparing for it, I am listening to Stevie Wonder's Superstition, and I ate a full, is it a candy bar? A Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, a candy bar? I don't think so. They're just Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Well, I had one of the king-size ones, with the 4 peanut butter cups inside, and I ate the whole thing for breakfast. So there you go. You know it's going to be an interesting show. And the funny thing is the song Stevie Wonder's Superstition plays a part in today's show. So I was just bebopping along. I must have played Superstition about 10 times in a row while jotting down some notes and just bebopping around my apartment here. Sometimes it's Iron Maiden. Sometimes it's done in silence. Sometimes I'm listening to sports radio out of Pittsburgh. But I can guarantee you this is the first time I've listened to Stevie Wonder preparing for this show. I hope you all had a beautiful week. I hope you all have a beautiful weekend. It's spectacular here in Madeira Beach. I've gotten to the point where now it's warm enough that I have to turn on the air conditioning in my car. Frankly, in my 2001 Taurus with 130,000 miles on it, the air conditioning isn't the greatest, but it does work. It works just enough. If it was 1 degree warmer, I would say that it probably wouldn't work. If the car was just a little bit bigger inside, it wouldn't work. But just given the way it is right now, it just barely works. Hey, that's the living conditions of an artist like myself, of a speaker like myself, who is trying to still cut out a niche somewhere on this earth. Way it goes, I guess. If I wasn't suffering, then I don't know how good my artistry would be. In any case, my trivia team. Did I ever tell you the name of my trivia team? My name is Intellectually Frisky is the name of my trivia team. We used to keep one name for several seasons at Fat Cat Tavern in Largo, Florida. If you ever want to join us, we're there on Thursday nights. But we bebopped around. There goes the word bebop. Surely have not used that more than once or twice ever in the history of this show. But we move from name to name now, and this particular season we are Intellectually Frisky. I did not pick it. I think it's kind of funny, but I didn't pick it. We finally won the night. We missed the final question 4 weeks in a row and kind of dejected about all that. But we only had 5 people there last night, and we still won. So who says there's safety in numbers? Let's move to the show. I guess we first got to talk about Paul Ryan. As I told you 3 weeks ago, I have no idea how long ago it was. It could have been in February for all I know. I told you eventually he was going to have to get on board with Donald Trump. He was eventually going to come around. And that's why it seems like all of this outrage that came from the Trump people when Paul Ryan wouldn't automatically endorse him, the automatic outrage that came from them, calling him all these names in the book. Now, I want to know, are all those names still true about Paul Ryan now? Now that he's on board with you, has he suddenly changed overnight? Did he wake up yesterday morning or 2 days ago when he decided to support Donald Trump? Did he wake up as a new man? Was this like Invasion of the Body Snatchers? They took away the real Paul Ryan, and now a Trump supporting Paul Ryan is in his place? I just want to know. Are you going to go on Twitter and apologize for all of those things he said, or you said, about him? As you know, I'm not a big defender of Paul Ryan. I'm not an attacker of Paul Ryan. I think he's a decent guy. Not as conservative as we all thought. Not as conservative as we hardcore conservatives, non-Trump people would like. But going back to when John Boehner got kicked out last year, or was it 2 years ago now? Once again, time's flying. It was last year. it seemed like just a lesson in futility here. For all of those conservatives who wanted John Boehner gone, and then they did all of this, the Freedom Caucus, the Liberty Caucus, and the best they could do was putting Paul Ryan in his place. And I asked you way back then, was it worth it? And now all of you conservatives who wanted John Boehner gone, was it now worth it to put a Speaker of the House in place who now supports Donald Trump? I just want to know. Because you could have gotten that with John Boehner. And Paul Ryan could have just stayed out of the whole thing. And maybe continued, at least in some ways, to be more conservative than now he has to be to try to keep all of these different factions of Republicans together in the House. And then on top of that, because he's seen as a leader in the Republican Party, it gets a little weird for him to say, no, he's not going to support Donald Trump, and then, eventually had to. Like I said, he had to. And not because Trump put any pressure on him, not because all of the Trump cultists tried to put any pressure on him. It's just the way party politics goes. But this does put anybody who would be a responsible Trump supporter, you have to be feeling weird about now, don't you? Don't you? So principled in your liking of Donald Trump, and then you start looking around at all of these people who are now in your camp that you really, truly don't like. In fact, the only reason they like them is now because they're in your camp, not for any other reason. And see, I think this is what it's eventually going to come down to in all of this, is that at some point, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later, maybe regarding this judge that Donald Trump has attacked. But at some point, maybe this week, maybe next week, maybe October, when people start thinking about voting in the election that really counts, people start looking around at the people who are on their side. If they're undecided, they look at the side where Trump is and all of the people who are supporting him, and then look at all the never Trump people, and you start thinking, which group of people would I rather be in a foxhole with? Which group seems like the more mature people? Which group seems like the more principled people? Which group of people seems like they have more character? I don't think there's any question. But I'm a little biased being that I'm part of the Never Trump crew. In Paul Ryan's case, though, I'm not going to give him too hard of a time regarding it. I just want to know if you Trump people are going to continue to give him a hard time. And see, this all starts sounding like a little bit of a cult, of a fraternity, of a sorority. I went to college. I know a little bit about that. If you're outside our group, you must be an idiot. But as soon as you're inside, we're going to call you names. We're going to attack you. We're going to call you this and call you that. But then as soon as you decide to come along with us, it's like none of that ever happened. It's so weird. It's so weird. And I know a lot of people who are going to go vote in November, if Trump is still the Republican nominee, don't even think about that stuff. They don't want to have anything to do with it. But this stuff does drive conversation, and it matters. It does. But when Paul Ryan was not going to come out and say nice things or endorse Donald Trump a month ago, I knew it was just a matter of time. Now, why he didn't do it back then, I don't know. Why he chose to do it this week, I don't know. But he's now on board. Seems like all of those other leaders are on board. And I know the way that the Trump people see this. See, this is how Trump is going to change Washington. All those people are going to have to go along with him. Yes. Are you really saying that Paul Ryan's going to come back if Donald Trump becomes president and Paul Ryan is the Speaker of the House, that he's going to push some different agenda? Maybe. How different? 1% different? 10% different? 50% different? 75, 100%? Can you even give me a percentage? Same way in the Senate. If even the Republicans still control the Senate, and we'll just have to see about that. See, I don't think it's going to change even 1%. And this is why this all seems like a huge farce to me. It's a show. I got a tweet yesterday from somebody. I don't know. I have 16-some thousand followers. I don't know who it was. Forget the name. But I had linked to an article about Donald Trump, and it had to do with the PGA story that I talked about yesterday. And the guy who is a Trump supporter, I checked his profile. He has a hashtag Trump 2016. He responded to me, and he wasn't nasty or anything. He wasn't. But you could tell by the tone of his response, and I forget the exact words, but it's all just a big joke. As if what is all going on here is just nothing but another reality show to watch. As if Trump's words and his actions, or any other person's words and actions, don't mean anything. It's just a show. It's just a contest. And in the end, somebody gets a win, and we go on to the next episode. This is really nothing but WWE. It's all scripted. It's just a soap opera playing out with twists and turns, and you find out that no, those brothers aren't twins. They're actually triplets. And that person you thought died 2 years ago actually survived, and he's back, but actually he's been changed into a woman now, and he's transgendered. It's just like that. That's all this is, and people want their entertainment, dang it. And this Paul Ryan thing, it's just part of the same thing. Somebody who insists, though, they're not going to do something, and then they do it, and it just adds more drama for people to follow. No principles involved, no values, no character, nothing. Just, I want entertained. Give me my bread, give me my circuses. Well, we're going to get it. And as I was telling my co-host of my other show, America's Missing Podcast, my co-host Melissa, who I don't think I'm talking out of school here when I say she's not is not as conservative as I am. That's fine. Not a big deal at all. No big deal. I enjoy talking to her about this stuff outside of doing our America's Missing Podcast show. But I told her, you know what? We're going to get that circus, and we're going to get it good and hard. Which really technically means bad and hard. We're going to get it. And we're probably going to deserve it. You know. But let's move on to something else regarding all of this. And this next issue, this next topic with Trump and Trump University and this judge, what's his name? Gonzalo Curiel, Curiel. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Not doing it on purpose. Don't know the man. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm not pronouncing it correctly. I've not heard it pronounced. Because, as you know, I read all my news. I don't listen to it or watch it. Gonzalo Curiel is this judge who is in charge of this case with Trump University, and there was allegedly fraud involved in deceptive sales tactics and marketing tactics. And unless you've been under a rock for the last year, you know that Trump University has had its share of detractors. But this case is going through, And some of the facts of the case were out and came out, and they're not too flattering to Trump University. And Donald Trump has gone on this tirade talking about Gonzalo Curiel, and he should not qualified to judge this case because he is Mexican and because there might be an inherent bias judge against Donald Trump because of Trump and how he's going to allegedly build this wall. If you can if you can make all of those logical leaps, I guess somebody would understand that if they can make all of those logical leaps. Now, I do understand that there is a question of integrity of the court that some of this got out. I understand that. I also understand that the judge might have in passing been friends or had something to do with one of the lawyers who is representing one of the plaintiffs in this case against Trump. I've read all of that. I know it. Don't act. I'm going to tell you. I just know it. And if those things are true, they should be investigated and tried to discern if this judge is being unbiased or not. Okay? However, what that has to do with the judge being Mexican or having a Mexican name, he's an American citizen. What it has to do with him having the name Gonzalo Curiel, which maybe sounds a little bit non-waspy-ish to me, is beyond me. But see, the reason that I was listening to, not Donald Trump, I was listening to Stevie Wonder's Superstition is because as I was reading this story, I thought of that song. When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer. Those are the lines to the chorus of that song. And what a great... I'm not the hugest Stevie Wonder fan. I mean, I like all types of music, but as you know, I'm mainly a heavy metal guy. But I have a deep appreciation for all types of music except country. But that song has such a great groove. Great. Spectacular. Even I might be able to dance to that. And this is Donald Trump. Because he doesn't understand things, because he doesn't care about details, everything that happens, he can only think of it in a couple different ways. The reason the person does it is because if somebody does something that he doesn't like, the person must hate him. If the person does something for him that he likes, the person must like him. That's how everything is deduced in Donald Trump's world because he doesn't understand anything. Once again, when you believe in things you don't understand, then you suffer. Now, in this case, it sounds like the American people are going to suffer. Can't understand that it may be the reason that Donald Trump is losing in this case so far is because the facts are against him. But no, they can never be that. Because that would take too much work to understand. It's much easier to understand that the guy has a Mexican name and is doing this against Donald Trump. There's a reason that Donald Trump frames everything that I like that person, I don't like that person. That person is a very bad person, that person is a very nice person. There's a reason. You know what it sounds like to me? There's a commercial out there right now. I think it's a progressive commercial with Flo. Did I ever tell you how much my parents can't stand Flo? I don't know why. I think for my dad's reason is because progressive, the CEO is a big liberal. I think that maybe that's the reason. And on top of that, they look at Flo and she seems kind of weird with that red hair. Have I ever told you that? That's true. But I think it's a Flo commercial for progressive. It's a relatively new one on the radio where she's acting like a ditzy woman and she goes, well, I just like to come in and let my personality shine. Have you heard that commercial? If you haven't, just pay a little more attention or maybe you can find it online or something and you'll see what I'm talking about. we know that there are both men and women who believe that all it takes is a good personality to get through in life. You don't need to study. You don't need to know technically anything. No skills. Don't know how to speak. Don't need to know how to write. All you have to do is be nice. And sometimes that works, but at some point you have to know something. To me, that's how Donald Trump is. I don't have to know anything. It's just the force of my personality that will make people go along with me. And if they don't, it must be because they hate me, because surely I can't be wrong. The facts are always on my side. And from a force of personality comes a cult of personality. And that's why you have Donald Trump. He doesn't want to understand these things. He thinks he is so above all of it. He thinks that there are shortcuts to fixing things. And they can't be fixed. He's going to bail on it anyway, just like we know that he's written in some of his books, like Art of the Deal. Guess who's going to get it done to next? Us. Us. This also reminds me, what this also reminds me of is these conversations that I used to have years ago. I told you there was a period in my life, I maybe haven't mentioned this recently, but there was a period in my life where I was around people a lot more than I am now. And most of them were liberal. And this job, I worked at least 4 days a week. It was like 4 10-hour days. And most of the people I was around were liberals, outspoken liberals around my age. And we had a lot of downtime with the work we were doing. And so couldn't help get into political conversations. It was, during September 11th and the invasion of Iraq. And it was almost on a daily basis when I was at work that some political discussion would pop up. And I found myself arguing against 2 or 3 kooks. And that's kind of where I began to formulate all of these arguments that I now make for conservatism and defending it against liberalism. Because that helps. When you have to be prepared to do that every day when you get to work. And it was somewhat friendly, I guess. There was no shouting involved. There was no F-bombs dropped or anything. But they thought I was crazy and I thought they were crazy. Even though to this day I still call some of them friends. But they also, in my opinion, were like Donald Trump in that you don't need to understand anything as long as you're suspicious, as long as you're into conspiracies and believing that this is working against you and that is working against you. You don't have to take any time to figure out how things actually work. For example, can you believe that there are still people out there that the world is controlled by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, these families that manipulate currencies? Can you believe there are still millions and millions of people who still believe that? And why people get rich and why people get poor, and you can't do it this way, you can't work. Really what these people were saying, and I would point out to you once in a while, because this usually gets a little more personal than I like to get in an argument, is that, did you ever think about the reason you haven't succeeded? Maybe it's you. I'm just saying, have you ever... I know what you're saying here, that the average man can't get ahead and you're having trouble paying your bills and you want to blame it, the average man can't get ahead. Could it be you? Do you even entertain that thought at all? The reason that you're poor is you. I realize there might have been some bad luck in your life and that sucks. This is kind of what I think of when I think of Donald Trump. There couldn't surely be any reason that we buy so much from China except for the fact that there's some conspiracy going on regarding the American government and Chinese government. It couldn't be the reason that Americans maybe just like buying cheap stuff. Surely that couldn't be it. It must be something else. And that China is taking advantage of us, because it surely couldn't be anything else in Donald Trump's mind. An example I used to point out to these people is at some point you have to understand things that happen. I like to give the example of volcanoes. There was a time in human history, and it's not so long ago. Many people in the world believe that the reason volcanoes erupted was because a god is mad. That's not that long ago. And the way to make the god happy was to sacrifice animals, to sacrifice virgins, young women, maybe even some boys. Wasn't that what was that Mel Gibson movie, Apocalyptic? Have you ever seen that? I saw that movie. Wasn't there something like that went on in that movie? I seem to remember. Maybe it's been years since I saw it. But now we know in the 21st century that that's crazy. We know volcanoes erupt because of things going on underneath the earth, tectonic plates and lava, and the volcano is just an opening down to that layer underneath these plates that we call continents. That's all it is. Now, maybe the earth was built by God, but it's hard to say that the volcano is caused by God, and surely it's crazy to say that if you sacrifice a virgin, the volcano will stop. In fact, there's really no reason, there's no way to stop a volcano right now as far as our technology goes. A volcano happens, you just got to get out of the way. Whereas it seems in Donald Trump's world that everything, if a volcano erupts, otherwise known as a problem in his life, it couldn't be because of something scientific based on facts. It must be somebody's angry, somebody's mad. No studying involved. Donald Trump is a guy who still believes that volcanoes are caused by bad gods and not because of science. And for those people who say that religion and science don't have anything to do with each other and all that volcano comparison is always a good one for me. And I guess not a comparison, but an analogy. When you believe in things you don't understand, then you suffer. And I think that if we knew Donald Trump well, and I think we could, I think there's probably a lot about him that gets covered up about his own personality. He's taking his suffering in his life out on the rest of us. But we see it, or not me, but too many people see it as entertainment. When he has those shows and the competitions and everything, he likes seeing those people suffer and get stressed out and work against each other and lie, cheat, and steal to please him. And that's bizarre. And it's one of the reasons, not just with Donald Trump's show, but all those reality shows, there's such a turnoff to me. They're not about enjoyment and the best in human character. It's all about the worst in human character. Conniving, backstabbing, things that should not be celebrated, certainly not in a mass medium. They're a part of our life. That doesn't mean we should celebrate it. Unlike game shows where people actually have to show knowledge and they're having a fun time, which is a little bit different. Now, what can we do about it now? I don't know. It's going to happen. Like I said before, we're going to get the circus, and we're going to get it good and hard, which really means it's going to be bad and hard. But Donald Trump, he sees everything as how it affects him. People are nice. He's no different, really. Just take the hair away and the wrinkles away and the poundage away and the orange makeup away and everything. He's no different than a 15-year-old girl. Everything happens in her life because somebody either loves her or hates her. It couldn't be on any decision she made that has anything to do with logic and the way the world really works. So you Trump people, you go and vote for the 15-year-old girl. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to move on to something kind of related to what I talked about in the first half, but somewhat different news story. Not having to do with this judge, but about judges in general. As I wrote to a friend of mine today regarding, once again, the story about Trump University with Gonzalo Curiel, Curiel, I asked this friend of mine, and this friend of mine happens to have a law degree, doesn't practice law now, but he went to law school, graduated. But I asked him because he's still one of these guys who's on the fence. He's one of these guys that's like, I can't believe now we have an opportunity to go against Hillary Clinton that I'm actually going to sit this election out because of Donald Trump. And I think there are a lot of people like this friend of mine. But he still keeps hanging on to the idea that, well, at least Donald Trump would nominate somebody, a judge, that would surely be better than anybody who Hillary Clinton would pick. All right, and I think a lot of Republicans on the fence, remember, I'm not a part of the Republican Party anymore, a lot of Republicans who are on the fence are thinking that way. Well, I got something to ask you. If I know what Trump is saying about this particular judge, and you should know that this Gonzalo Curiel, he was a guy who was appointed by Barack Obama, just to be honest. If I know that Trump is criticizing this judge, then don't all of those 11 justices, for example, that ended up on that SCOTUS list from a month ago, all these allegedly good conservatives, I'm going to take for granted they are. I don't know any of them. I'm just reading what people have said about them. And then they surely know that as well. And they now know that Donald Trump isn't afraid to go after a judge's ethnicity or anything else. I'm going to ask you, what good conservative judge would truly, really, and I know that I differed on this a few weeks ago, but just saying, just going to put this question out there. What good conservative judge would really, truly want to be known as the man or woman who was appointed to the Supreme Court by Donald Trump? Now, I know a few weeks ago what I said, that probably if any one of those judges were picked, that's a big deal. For a judge to get appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States or even have a chance, that's like getting to play in the Stanley Cup Finals, like what's going on with the Penguins and the Sharks right now. It's like going to the World Series. It's like the Super Bowl. It's like turning down Powerball money. But if in winning or getting that Powerball money, you know that you are attaching yourself to a man, a politician, a leader like Donald Trump, is it worth it? Is it really worth it? Now you may say, well, the person knows that Donald Trump's only going to be in there for 4 years or, God forbid, 8 years. And if I'm in my 50s, I'm probably going to be a judge into my 70s, which means only that first half of the time am I going to have to put up with him, then it'll be somebody else. Well, that could be a very long 8 years, couldn't it? Because that judge, if he is appointed, some federal judge, goes before the Senate, gets approved in the back of his head or her head, they'd have to be thinking, okay, I'm getting nominated here, but once I start deciding on the bench and if I stick to my principles, I know that's going to fly in the face of what the guy who appointed me wanted. Do I really want to deal with that? I know it's a spectacular opportunity. The best opportunity that any judge can get in the United States. Is it worth it? now that I know how Donald Trump truly feels about the legal system. Now, when you ask yourself that, how many of those people on that list of 11, we know that's just suggestions. I don't think any of those people are going to come anywhere close to being nominated if Donald Trump becomes president. But just saying, which one of those people really wants to be attached to Donald Trump? Because you know what getting in bed with Donald Trump means, and I don't mean his hair. See, this is the other problem about the thinking of these conservatives are still hanging on. Donald Trump dislikes the legal system. He only likes it if it goes his way. He doesn't believe in the idea. This is why he never talks about freedom and liberty and justice. All he talks about is anger, revenge, getting even. Now, given that, how could you ever believe that he ever would nominate a conservative to the Supreme Court and then truly expect that conservative to rule or not to judge conservatively? It's just not. If you think that about Donald Trump, you're crazy. The reason that Donald Trump is going to nominate any judge, no matter what that man or woman's judicial history is, it's going to be Donald Trump is going to see it as, I'm getting one of my own on the Supreme Court. Somebody who will do my bidding. I mean, why do you think, going way back, that his first thought was to nominate his sister to the Supreme Court? Why? Probably not because of any of her rulings, just because he knows who having the inside line to her. It's all about connections to him. Once again, this goes back to, it's all about personalities. All he wants to do is let his personality shine. Can't be bothered with the issues. Lip service to him. And that's why when people have started once in a while getting in depth to him, he has no depth. You walk, it's like a Hollywood house. You open up the front door, step through the doorway, you're in the backyard. But you know what? From the front, looks like the most beautiful house in the world. He's going to nominate a judge who is going to do his own bidding. Just like he picked Katrina Pearson, just like he picked Katrina Lewandowski, and all these other people that Donald Trump has picked to be part of his campaign. People he picks, he expects them to do his bidding. Not the people's bidding, if it was a judge. Not the Constitution's bidding, or its amendments, or the Bill of Rights, or any precedences that have been set by the Supreme Court. None of that. It's Donald Trump's agenda that will be required to be carried out. And how you could think any other way, once again, crazy to me. That has been his pattern, the pattern of his entire life. And then suddenly he's going to pick a conservative for the court, and he's just going to allow that conservative to judge in conservative ways. If you think that, you're nuts. You people, I'm not even talking to the Trump cultists now. Those people on the fence, you're nuts. How you can be adults and delude yourself like that is unreal to me. Do you hate Hillary Clinton that much that you will betray your own sensibilities? But that's what's going on here. The bigger picture outside of the judicial nominations and what Donald Trump thinks about this and thinks about that. There's a candidate in this race that is hoping that you hate something more, that you hate Hillary Clinton more than you love your sensibilities and that you love your character. That's what Donald Trump is hoping. Are you going to allow that to happen? This all sounds like Star Wars. Give in to your hate, Luke. Are you going to do that? We know what giving into hate, because that is the only reason anybody could vote for Donald Trump these days. Except for the cultists. It's just because of all this hate for Hillary Clinton. And I don't want to be driven by hate. As I've said many times over, anger and hate are not requirements to beat somebody. Novak Djokovic does not hate Roger Federer. He doesn't hate Andy Murray. But he wants to beat them anyway. He doesn't have to be angry at them to know he has to win. Pittsburgh Penguins might win the Stanley Cup within the next week. They don't have to hate the San Jose Sharks to beat them. They just have to play better. And something that we as conservatives overall outside of Donald Trump is we just don't play well enough. We got plenty. There's a lot of people out there who are plenty angry. Anger doesn't win games. Nobody wants to hear that. You know why? Because like Donald Trump, it's easier to be angry than to be smart. It's easier to want revenge than to just beat your opponent because they're wrong and you're right. This is such a shortcut country. See, I guess, once again, I always try to preface this with the way my life has gone in contrast to most other people's lives. And I don't think that I'm special. All right? But I think that if you were an artist or you're trying to, how do I put this without sounding arrogant? When you're trying to do tough things, when you're trying to get a literary agent, that's tough. When you're trying to sell books on your own, that's more difficult than going through law school. You know how I know? Because most people who go to law school graduate. Most people who try to sell books don't. Okay? That's how I know. It's easier to go through medical school than it is to sell books on your own. Once again, how do I know? More doctors being churned out than successful self-published writers. That's how I know. So, me personally, I'm used to understanding that if you want great things, they don't come easily. And in fact, you're probably going to fail. But it's not about success or failure. It's actually about sticking to your principles and not being angry, not being happy, not being sad, not being hateful, not being revengeful, but just about the process. Whereas most people, I'm not sure if they've chosen something else to do with their life, they truly understand that. They have tough things that they get through. Every person does. But when you equate it to your livelihood, most people, no doubt, there's stressful jobs and everything, but most people are somewhat successful in their jobs. That's the truth. Even in the 21st century, most people are successful with their jobs. Whereas the truth is, most writers are never successful. Most Walmart greeters are successful. Most writers are not. Most convenience store managers are successful. Most writers are not. People are not used to having a ton of failure in their lives. They have failure. Nothing compared to people who are getting rejected on a day-by-day basis. I know they have stress. I know nurses have stress and doctors have stress and accountants and teachers and everything else. But I'm talking about failure. Imagine a doctor that he's a doctor at a hospital, and every patient he deals with dies. Every single one. Probably wouldn't be a doctor anymore, frankly. Maybe. Probably not. Dies in his care. Now, we all know, all of us die. None of us gets out here alive. But a doctor who's required to heal somebody can't do it to anybody. That's what it is in my world and a lot of people who've chosen to do what I do, chosen a particular life path. So we're used to knowing that getting angry and wanting revenge on literary agents and publishers and it doesn't help. Most people, once again, are not used to that. They don't think of things. Their life every day is not like that. Most people can go weeks, if not months, in the work that they do in their lives and never see any rejection and any failure. Maybe they have a computer failure, a hard drive goes bad, something like that. But something that once you want to get done and it just can't get done, and you encounter that every day. And see, I think that's why I have such this clear opposition to Donald Trump, because I see him as a guy who wants to take shortcuts. He doesn't believe in the process. Doesn't believe in it. Understand that the only way that you get to great places in life is either you hit Powerball, which is 1 in 200 million chance, or you just keep going, getting up to bat, and swinging and missing, and swinging and missing, and swinging and missing until you learn to not swing and miss. Most people are not equipped for that. They're not mentally equipped, and I'm not saying everybody should be. But if we are conservatives and we want good stuff for the United States, then we should be sticking to our principles and not being afraid to swing and miss. And going with Donald Trump is taking a shortcut. It's trying to get in through the back door when the bouncer at the front won't let you in. See, maybe this might be like some person who gets out of college and goes to job interview, and gets rejected. Maybe it's something like that. You start realizing it's not anger or anything else that's going to get you that job that you want. It's probably going to be have to work on your resume a little bit more. Maybe you need to take some little part-time work to build up that resume a little bit more. Maybe you need to show a little bit more knowledge about the job that you're trying to get. Once again, maybe it's you. Maybe it's not the person that's interviewing you. The problem we have is that too many people are going to tell you, "Hey Ed, it's not you. It's not your fault. It's their fault." And that's where the building up of the ego comes in. That's where the arrogance starts. When you start thinking in terms of, it's not me, it's them. I'm the better one. I'm the perfect one. They're the imperfect one. And a guy like Donald Trump will feed into that all day because he is a flawed person, whether he's in politics or not. He'll feed into it's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. All of his Trump followers, all of his people are going to vote for him. It's not your fault that you're poor. It's somebody else. It's China's fault. It's Mexico's fault. Yeah, I know that you haven't had a job and you haven't gone to interview in 6 months, but that's not your fault. That's somebody else's fault. People love that stuff because it feeds into our egos. It feeds into our vanity. Because they sit there and think, that's right. I am perfect. This is where this is why a Donald Trump can come up through the ranks and have a chance at being president of the United States. All it takes is feeding into people's 7 deadly sins. And that is something that is outside politics, and that's why once in a while I touch upon the character of the United States. The truth is, if we want the United States to be a better place, it's not going to happen with Donald Trump or any other president. It's going to start with you. I hate to get all philosophical and, be the change you want to see in the world, something like that. But this is what it is. All these people claiming, well, I've played by the rules and I've done this and I've done that. Well, let's sit down and let me talk to you for an hour. Let's see what your political views are. Let's see what your view is on the minimum wage. And let's see what your view is on trade. And let's see what your view is on business and everything else. And I'm sure eventually, you know what we're going to find out? Probably a lot of the reason that you're in the situation you are in is because your priorities aren't straight. You have all of these different contradictions on the way that you see the world. You think that you're entitled to a job. You think that you're entitled to a certain wage. You think that all business in the world can only be conducted in the United States and nowhere else. Doesn't matter that the price is going to go up for everybody else who is just trying to get by with their own job. Doesn't matter. It's all about you. You're perfect. Everybody else has the flaws. Whereas, for the record, when it comes to me and the other things I do outside this show, and this is a question I've been asking myself a lot, particularly this year, is what do I have to do to be better? If I'm getting rejected by agents, it's not their fault. You know whose fault it is? It's my fault. I'm not enticing them enough. Maybe my writing's not good enough. Maybe my query letter just isn't right. If I don't have enough listeners to the show, it's not the listener's fault. It's not all the conservatives out there who I think would love me. It's my fault. I have to do marketing better. I have to tweet better. I have to do this better. Most people, and once again, not to pat myself on the back but I'm used to thinking about this every day. Most people don't think of it this way. They think that they didn't get that job interview and that promotion and that raise and everything is because that person hates them. It's probably something else. But Donald Trump and people like him will come along and feed into your ego all day. And it'll make you feel good. And we as conservatives, unfortunately, we're just as liable to start thinking is, well, if it makes me feel good, if it's right, and if it makes me feel bad, it's wrong. We are just as likely to do that as any other political group in the world. But we know life is more than just feeling good and feeling bad. Sometimes when you feel bad, it's what you need. And sometimes when you feel good, it could actually be hurting you. So once again, we come back to what Donald Trump would actually do if he were president and if he would nominate a Supreme Court justice of a conservative bent. I say it's an outstanding, never going to happen. Never going to happen because of everything I just talked to you about. He wants his ego stroked. He wants somebody he can control. And none of these judges are going to blow their reputations for this guy. So he will pick somebody else. He will pick a milquetoast judge that's kind of just like him. Whose judgments, somehow he's worked him or herself up through the ranks and just is all over the place and wants to be Supreme Court justice so bad that they're willing to do Donald Trump's bidding. And it will happen. That's about all I got for you today. I just read something. I'm not going to get, it's just like I have 30 seconds. Libertarian Convention, it was held over in Ontario. Read some crazy stories about that thing. One more reason I'm glad I'm not a libertarian, and I will never identify with the Libertarian Party. And a libertarian will never get my vote. But you can look that up for yourself. I suggest you go to ricochet.com to do that. But that's the end of the show. You can go to edwarddentzel.com. You can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. Find them also at SoundCloud, Podbean, Podomatic, and YouTube. edwarddentzel.com/book. You can download for free the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. Facebook, LinkedIn. Email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. My other show, America's Missing Podcast, with my co-host, Melissa Bridges. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Have a great weekend.